And this passage beginning at verse 9. As I said before, if you don't have a Bible, do grab one off the table at the back. It'll be valuable to you as I'll just refer to some verses here and there that you'll be able to look at yourself. I was heading to the wedding of one of my best friends at university, and the wedding was being held at the town that we'd studied at. And I was quite excited because it was a couple of years after I'd been there, and I was excited to be going back and seeing everybody again. There was this beautiful service in the old church that we'd attended. And then while the bride and groom were out taking photographs, me and some of my friends went to McDonald's and downed about 40 chicken nuggets each because there was an offer on, buy 20, get 20 free, because that's what everybody needs in their life. And then from there we headed over to the wedding reception, where we were met by an usher who said, "Geoff, you haven't been invited to this part." Now, it's pretty awkward turning up at a wedding that you're not invited to. Today there's a wedding. Right at the end of the book of Ruth, Boaz has said he's going to redeem everything that was Elimelech's. He would buy the land and the property. He's going to take Naomi into his care. He'll take Ruth as his wife. And the first male child that they have will be counted as Mahlon's son. That's the son of Ruth's dead husband, Mahlon. So that the family name from Elimelech will not be lost in the history of Israel. And so what we're really reading now tonight and next Sunday night, God willing, is the happy climax of the book of Ruth. We've been impressed by her and her hard work and her faith, and now we get to see her happy. So whereas the book of Judges ends on that really sour note, Ruth is going to end with a real note of joy and hope and expectation. The wedding that happens is incredibly simple. It has 3 parts that all begin with C, and the first is the congratulations in verse 9 through to 12. And so Boaz has committed himself, verse 9, he declares to the elders and the witnesses at the gate of Bethlehem, "I'm going to redeem Naomi, and I'm going to take Ruth as my wife." The nearest kinsman, the one who was nearer than Boaz, had shirked his responsibility, but Boaz is not ashamed to be Ruth's husband. He says plainly, "She's going to be my wife." And as soon as he says it, verse 10, it's met, verse 11, by congratulatory prayer. Everybody at the gate stops what they're doing to seek God's blessing on Boaz and Ruth. That prayer has 3 parts. Number 1, that God would bless Ruth. All the people who are at the gates, verse 11, and the elders said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel." And so the people pray that Ruth would know the happiness of having kids and the honor of building the family of God, just like the great matriarchs Rachel and Leah had had the privilege of doing. Then secondly, they pray that God would bless Boaz, keeping him honest. Verse 12, verse 11, the end of it. "May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem." And so they're praying then that Boaz would be honest and admired in Bethlehem and the surrounding area. And then thirdly, they pray that God would honor Boaz's faithfulness to him. Verse 12, "And may your house be like the house of Perez, who Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman." Now, the first 2 parts of the prayer are really easy to understand. This one we need to dig a little bit, but it's very helpful that we've been studying Genesis in the mornings, because we know who the Perez is who's mentioned here. Remember, Jacob's son Judah had 3 sons, Onan, and Sarah. He found a wife for called Tamar. But Genesis 38, you remember that miserable chapter, was wicked and God killed him. So now it was Onan's responsibility to marry Tamar and provide children for his brother so that his name wasn't lost. But Onan was wicked, and though he was happy to use Tamar sexually, he made sure she couldn't get pregnant, and so God killed him. Now it was the responsibility of Sarah, Judah's youngest son, to provide sons for his brothers, but Judah held Sarah back from Tamar by deceit. And so Tamar tricked Judah into sleeping with her and got pregnant with twins. This chapter is a mess. Remember, just because the Bible reports something doesn't mean it endorses something. It's not saying this is the way God's people should be living. This is a horror show in Genesis. Tamar tricks Judah into getting her pregnant with twins. The oldest of the twins was Perez. And so the story of Perez is simply this: despite the sins of his people, God graciously provided a way for this family to be maintained. Now we jump from Genesis 38. You didn't have to turn there, but you can jump to Genesis 46. You remember from our morning series that this is where the family is listed as they go into Egypt. And in Genesis 46, Judah's family are listed, verse 12, and Perez, even though he would have been a young man, we find out there, already has 2 sons. Perez has got his own 2 kids. God is blessing Perez and his family, and he's making it large. Even though he's young, he's got children. One of Perez's sons is Hezron, and he's mentioned here back in Ruth chapter 4 and down in verse 18. He's an ancestor of those who live in Bethlehem, and a many times a great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of Boaz. And so Perez is the man who God raised up, and this is what the people are praying: may you be like Perez. Perez is the man that God raised up to rescue a dying family line, and who he blessed tremendously. And now the people are saying, be like Perez. Boaz, be like Perez. He is another man that God is raising up to rescue a dying family line. God bless him too. Planning a wedding today is chaos. And it doesn't matter how long you leave, there's always things to do and to organize. Practicalities to arrange, venues, dresses, rings, cars, honeymoon, photographs, and I'm an expert in all of this because Sarah's told me all about it. Engaged couples are surrounded. You're smothered by busyness and by excitement and advice. What about prayer? Boaz announces his intention to marry Ruth, and the immediate response of God's people is prayer. I'm going to pray for you. Because ancient Israel knew what today's Israel, that's us, forgets all too easily. What an engaged couple needs more than anything is the prayer of God's people. And when I do marriage counseling, and I'm spending time at the moment talking to Abby and Isaac, one thing that I'll encourage them to do, and I'll get them to do as their homework, is to invite themselves to some of your homes and to ask you about what marriage has been like. I think the last people, maybe you and Vic, Josh, or I forced you to do that, didn't I? And Hayden and Ali as well, get you to go and visit people. And the purpose for that is twofold. Number one, because I want them to hear about your experiences, because that's invaluable. But secondly, and far more importantly, is to have you praying for them. See, for some, marriage is very sweet, but that's not everyone's experience. Some have such a hard time, they'll say marriage has just been God's way of stopping us from fighting strangers. Marriage can be a real challenge, even for Christians. And so how foolish then not to seek out the prayerful support of the church, and how uncaring of us if we're not praying for anyone who is pursuing, preparing for marriage. Best piece of marriage advice you can be given is find people who will pray for you. Second C is verse 13, the celebrations. We don't have a lot of details about the wedding ceremony, and so a lot of people can fall into the trap of thinking that sleeping with somebody in the Old Testament, that was marriage. But if we look very carefully at the text, we will see that something happened before that. Verse 13, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went in to her. And so he takes Ruth to be his wife. That's all we get on the actual ceremony, but something has happened. No doubt there would have been some kind of public recognition, perhaps a party. But it's the next sentence, and he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. That is very simply and neatly laid out God's pattern. There's marriage, where two covenanting people give themselves wholly and only to one another in God's sight. And then, and only then, comes sex, which is the celebration of marriage, and only then comes children, the reward of marriage. That's the way God planned it for our good and for his glory. That's the pattern that he demands all of us follow. To break that pattern is to sin and to fall short of the glory of God. To break that pattern is to break God's heart and to invite his wrath. Now today the world thinks nothing of sleeping with people before you marry them. But it's not God's way. And it's not the way to real happiness. Sex is the celebration of marriage. And so it's meant to be saved for marriage. Think about it like this. When you started dating, maybe it was a little bit longer ago, so you weren't dating, you were courting, because we think if we put that word on it, it makes it all sound a little bit more respectable. But when you started dating, what gifts did you give each other? Chocolates, flowers. I used to send big kilo bags of lollies to Sarah's place of work just to make her colleagues jealous, make them think she's got an incredible boyfriend. And it worked. When you get engaged, what do you give? Diamond ring. You give gifts that are deeply precious and valuable and sweet. You make yourself that bit more vulnerable with each other. But the most personal and precious thing that you can give to anybody is yourself. There's no better gift to give than that. It is utterly priceless and a treasure to be saved for your husband or wife. I had some friends visiting from the UK and they asked me, if you don't have sex before you get married, how do you know you want to spend the rest of your life with that person? You all know people who would think that same way. Raise that same question. How do you know you want to spend the rest of your life with that person? Is it more sensible to live with somebody and sleep together before you marry them? If you think that, what does it say about the person that you're thinking about marrying? Isn't it much more beautiful to say, I don't care what you're like in bed, because I don't love you based on your performance. I love you for who you are. And I'm prepared to live with you even if that's going to be difficult. I'm prepared to go into this and find that we do clash on a few things and find that we do rile each other up and find that it really does grate on me that you can't seem to get those socks in the laundry basket no matter how big I want to buy. Those little things that grate on me, that wind me up, I'm prepared to deal with those and I'm prepared to work through those with you because I love you. And I love you regardless of what you're good at or what you're bad at. And it's not your sexual prowess that makes you worth loving. It's you. That speaks to me of an infinitely stronger, deeper, richer love. And so it's no surprise then when people who live together before they get married, those marriages tend to break down statistically much more frequently than those who haven't. Marriage, then sex, then kids. That is God's plan for his glory and for your joy. To break that pattern is a sin, and the soul that sins, it must die. Break God's order for marriage, you're facing eternity in hell. Unless your sin has been paid for and your hell has been suffered by Jesus, unless your failure and my failure is covered by Jesus. Success. Jesus, who was tempted in every way just as we are, but who's without sin, who didn't fail. Have you failed sexually? Well, of course you have. And you're in good company because you're surrounded by people who have failed sexually, because Jesus said, whoever looks at another person lustfully has already committed adultery with them in their heart. We're all sexual failures in God's eyes, but there's still enough grace in the Lord Jesus to forgive and to save every last one of us. What he's accomplished on the cross is enough to smother the sins of our hearts and our minds and our hands. So Ruth and Boaz are enjoying the blessing of marriage, and God gives them, that's the language in verse 13, gives them the gift of a child, gives them the gift of conception. That's how the Bible expects you to think about your children. They're not your property. They are a gift from God to be brought up for him. Now comes the third C in verse 14 to 16, and it's the consequences of the wedding. Ruth has a little boy, and he will be known as the son of Boaz, and he will be known as the son of Mahlon, Ruth's dead husband, so that the family line is able to continue. And the women of Israel gather around Naomi, and look at what they say, verse 14. The women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel." And we read that and we think, yeah, God has been so good in bringing Boaz into Naomi's life. He's not left her without a redeemer. But they're not talking about Boaz. And if we read a little bit further, they say that Ruth has given birth to this redeemer. Verse 15. He shall be a restorer of your life, a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Ruth didn't give birth to Boaz. She gave birth to Obed. And so these women are saying, here is the Redeemer that God has given you. Here is the one who is going to fix the problem of the break in the chain, the break in the family line. Obed is going to restore that. He's going to redeem your family and bring it back. Boaz has done his part, but now the attention is on Obed, because it's through him that Naomi's family is going to continue. Now, as we close, just notice 2 simple, practical points from these last couple of verses. Number 1, 2 simple truths. Number 1, godly grandparents are an incredible blessing. Verse 16, Naomi took the child, laid him on her lap, and became his nurse. In other words, she was there to help Ruth right from the start. She couldn't wait to get her hands on this little baby. You know, just as I've got a mum and a mother-in-law in the UK who are cursing coronavirus and desperate for borders to open so they can get their hands on this little girl with spiky ginger hair. And here's Naomi, and she takes this little boy. It means so much to her. He's going to restore the family line. When she had held her boys, they've been sickly boys. This boy's healthy, and he's strong, and he's going to live, and he's going to keep the name of her husband Elimelech and the name of her son Mahlon alive. And she's committed then to playing her part in his nurturing. You know, after my mum and dad, nobody had such a formative role in my life than my granddad. He was a gracious man. He was a man who loved God, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he loved me very much. And there's something incredibly special about grandparents. Grandparent can touch your life like nobody else. And so there's a great privilege and a great responsibility given to all grandparents to be a force for gospel good in the lives of their grandchildren. Remember what Paul wrote to Pastor Timothy? I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother, Lois, and in your mother, Eunice, and I'm persuaded now lives in you also. You say, oh, I don't have any grandchildren. Or perhaps your grandchildren are far away. There are grandchildren in this church with godly grandparents far away. Do you think you could make up for their absence a little bit in the same way that you're praying that others will make up for your absence in the lives of your grandkids who are dotted around the country or even further afield than that? Couldn't you be a force for gospel good in the lives of the children in our church? There are children, and there's a couple of teenagers, and there's a good handful of 20-somethings and even 30-somethings who are young Christians and need godly older Christian role models in their lives, willing to speak to them and share their experiences, their trials and challenges and successes as they've walked with the Lord Jesus. Couldn't you do that? Second thing, grandchildren are an incredible blessing. Godly grandparents are an incredible blessing. Grandchildren are an incredible blessing. And not unlike your kids, not in the way that, let me say this right, they're not a blessing, you've heard that line. They're not a blessing because unlike your kids, you get to give them back at the end of the day. They're a blessing for a much sweeter, much richer reason. Verse 15. Obed was going to restore Naomi's life and nourish her age. He will be to you, this is what the women say to Naomi, he will be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. Restorer of your life. Well, we get that. Obed's going to fix the dying family. The chain is restored. The link is back in place. And it can carry on. He's restored the life of Naomi, which was on the verge of being lost. He will nourish your old age. You grandparents know exactly what the Bible's talking about here. Think of my grandma. Sits in her living room and does many of the same things every day. Answers a few phone calls. Watches the chase. Does plenty of baking. It's a simple, low-energy life. And then the grandkids visit. And it's full noise. And she goes to bed absolutely exhausted, worn out, and she wouldn't have it any other way. She loves wearing herself out for her grandkids. Chasing after them makes her feel alive, much more than even the best episode of Coronation Street. God designed grandchildren to do that for you, you grandparents. It's a brilliant evidence of the genius of God's handiwork in building families. Your grandchildren are blessed to have you, and you are blessed to have them. And the simple application then is, in light of this responsibility and the joy that they are, love them. You love them like Jesus, and you teach them of Jesus, and you enjoy every minute of it to the glory of Jesus. Father, you are a good God, always good. Your mercies are new and they are sweet. And as we sing of this in a moment, we pray that it would be sung from a heart that is full, knowing that we have so many blessings, all because you have been generous, and warm and loving towards us. We thank you we thank you for your ultimate blessing and goodness to us in sending your Son, the Lord Jesus, to live the life we failed to live, to make up for our gross failures in so many areas, to make us right through his sacrificial death, to make us your children and a new family in you. Help us to cherish him, love him, to live wholeheartedly for him this week. We pray it in your precious name. Amen. Let's sing as we close this morning. Our theme was thankfulness, and it can come